Namaste and good morning, everyone. Let's start our Sunday Gita class with some Gita Dhyanam. Om Parthaye Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayan Swayam Vyasen Gratitam Puran Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advait Amrit Varshinim Bhagavati Mashtadashadhyayane Am Tvam Anusandhame Bhagavad Gita Bhavadveshine Namo Astute Vyas Vishal Buddhe Full Arvind Ayat Patra Nethe येन तव्या भारत तैल पूर्ण प्रज्वलितो ज्ञान में प्रदीपा परपान पारी जाताये तोत्र वेत्र एक पाने ज्ञान मुद्राए कृष्णाय गीता अमृत दुहे नमः सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोगदा गोपाल नंदना पार्थो वत्सा सुधीर भोगता दुग्धम गीता अमृतम महत वसुदेव सुतम देवम कंस चानूर मर्दनम देवकी परमानंदम कृष्णम वंदे जगद्गुरुम भीष्म द्रोण तटा जयद्रथ चला गांधार नीलोत्पला शल्य ग्रावती कृपेन वाहने कर्णेन वेलाकुला अश्वत्थाम विकर्ण घोर मकरा दुर्योधन अवर्तने सो तीर ना खलु पांडवै रन नदी के वर्तका केशवा पाराशर्य वत्सरोजमलम गीता अर्थगंधोटकम नाना ज्ञानक केसरम हरि कथा संबोधन अबोधितम लोकेश सज्जन षटपदय रह पेपिये मानम मुदा भूयाद भारत पंकजम कलिमल प्रध्वंसेन श्रेयसे मूकम करोति वाचालम पंगुम लंघ्यते गिरिम यत्कृपात्मां वंदे परमानंद माधवम यम ब्रह्म वरुण इंद्र रुद्र मरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्येस्तवे वेदै सांग पद क्रमोपनिषदे गायन्ति यम सामका ध्यानवस्थि तद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यम योगिनो यस्यन्तं न विदुसुर असुरगणा देवाय तस्मै नमः. As Urmil said, we are on chapter 15, Purushottama Yog. So if you break this word, Purush Uttam, the Supreme Soul, okay, Purushottam. And we ended our last week's class with verse number 8, where Lord Krishna says, when the Lord obtains a body, okay, so Lord of the body is the Atma. When the Lord obtains a body and when he leaves, he takes these and goes as the wind takes the scents from the seeds. And I told you last time, the seed means flowers. The fragrance just leaves the flower with the wind. That's how the soul just leaves the body. This is what he's trying to tell us. So now this subtle body, which is described in these verses, roughly as the five senses and the mind, and he said mind as the sixth, is being more clearly explained in the next verse. Let's start the class with verse number 9. Shrotram chakshus parshnam cha rasnam granam ev cha adhishthāye mana cha ayam vishyan upasevate. Shrotram, the ear, chakshu, the eye, sparshanam, the organ of touch, cha means and rasnam, the organ of taste, pranam, the organ of smell, ev means even, cha means and, adhishthāye, presiding over, manaha, the mind, cha means and, I am he, vishyan, objects of the senses, upasevate, enjoys, presiding over the ear, the eyes, the touch, the taste, and the smell. And also the mind. He enjoys the sense objects. So the Jeev, through the equipment of the mind, enjoys the world of objects available in the new environment. After leaving, goes into another environment and enjoys it. Through the sense organs of hearing, seeing, touching, tasting, and smelling. So this is what Lord Krishna is expressing in this verse to us. The pure light of consciousness never illumines any object, because in the pure light of the infinite, there are no objects at all to illumine. It is only the light of consciousness that is reflected at the mind, intellect, that becomes a special beam of light, which is called intelligence, in which alone the sense objects have illumined. That is why very often when we are thinking intensively on some problem, even if somebody comes to us, they're talking in front of us, we don't even hear them. We neither see them nor hear them. The image of the object has already fallen on the eyeball, and the sound of the speaker has made the necessary stimulation on ears. Yet we see and hear nothing. And we have all experienced this. Because this conscious mind is turned elsewhere. So that means the mind has to be connected to the senses. So this is the point Lord Krishna is making over here in these verses, that using the mind along with each sense separately, the individualized ego, the jiva, the dweller in the body, enjoys the sense objects. Okay, so this is how it works. If the consciousness, which is eternal and perfect, is so intimately present in every experience of us, how is it that we are living through vivid and real experience at every moment of our existence, but we don't recognize this divinity? We recognize the objective world, but we don't recognize the divinity. Even though intellectually we know that this divinity is constantly with us all the time. Lord Krishna says this self, the Atma, is visible only to the eye of the knowledge. Gyan Chaksha. And this is what he's telling us in verse number 10. Utkramatam sthitam va api bhunjanam va gunanvitam vimuda na anupashyanti pashyanti gyan chakshusha. Utkramantam, departing. Sthitam, staying. Va means or, api means also, bhunjanam, enjoying. Again, va means or, gunanvitam, united with the guns. Vimuda, the deluded, na means not, anupashyanti, do see him. Pashyanti, behold him. Gyan chakshusha, those who possess the eye of knowledge. Him who departs, stays, and enjoys. Who is united with the guns, the deluded do not see, but they behold who possess the eye of knowledge. Although the soul is seated within the body and savors the perceptions of the mind and senses, not everyone cognizes it. But Lord Krishna clearly says that those who have walked the path of spirituality, okay, when we walk on the path of spirituality, only then we can see that we are beholding Gyan Chakshu, the eye of wisdom. Ordinarily also we see an average person will see only the object. Cannot fully or correctly understand it. Better understanding of the things is always reserved to the man of knowledge. We can open the hood of the car, don't know. Average person will not know how the car functions, but the car mechanic knows. Average person can read, sure, read a poetry, but only a person who has the deeper sense will understand the beauty of the poetry. The knowledge, the deep knowledge. For an average person, it's just a stone, a beautiful stone, but a jeweler knows the worth of that stone. The same way, every one of us, so long as life resides in us, can perceive, feel, and think. It is only the wise person who can come to recognize and live the infinite essence of life itself. The infinite self is at all times present. It's never absent. It never sleeps. It's always awake. But when it leaves the body, then everybody says Atma has left. Because we don't see the body moving. We don't see that person who was talking a moment before, not talking anymore. So we have to, while enjoying the pleasures of life, pay attention to this light of consciousness that illumines for us all our mental experiences and all our intellectual judgments. Pay attention to that. Because he says, if you don't, then you are unintelligent. He calls it a vimood. Vimudaha na anupashyanti. The unintelligent perceives not this conscious knowledge that is constantly aware of his moment-to-moment experiences. Why don't we pay attention to this reality? Because we are so much preoccupied by the details of experiences. We cling to our desires for enjoying the outer beauty and things and the situations, and we overlook it. We fail to recognize the steady light of consciousness in us and around us too. Those who have got the detachment from the details of the outer field of experience alone come to recognize and live the joys of the pure self, the subject. That is the pure joy. We all want joy, but we run after the fleeting joys. The pure, eternal joy is closest than closer, and we fail to recognize it. This special vision is available to all of us. All of us. But it's called the eye of wisdom by Lord Krishna. This is not any special inner organ as such. It only represents an extra faculty that develops in the spiritual seeker. Because we got to pay attention to perceive the deeper significance and the subtler part of our life. The eye of knowledge cannot be developed unless the discipline of the self-perfection is properly practiced, which we call sadhana. Only very few people come to ultimately experience this self. While others, even though striving, fail to realize this. This is what Lord Krishna is explaining in verse number 11. Yatantaha yogina cha enam pashyanti atmani avasthitam yatantaha api akrit atman na enam pashyanti achetsaha. Yatantaha, striving. That means striving for perfection. Yatantaha, yatan karne wale. Yogina, the yogis, the seekers. Cha means and, enam means this. Pashyanti, see. Atmani, in the self, avasthitam, dwelling. Second line, yatanta, striving. Api, also, akrit atmana, unrefined. There's a term krit and akrit. Akrit is unrefined. Na enam, not this. Pashyanti, see, achet saha, the unintelligent. The seekers striving for perfection, behold him dwelling in the self. But the unrefined and unintelligent, even though striving, see him not. See, it's just like if we practice, sure, we are a practitioner. So we can be a practitioner, but we got to practice perfectly to become a perfect practitioner. We got to know what we are striving for, how to strive, and what the goal is, what the obstacles are, and how to rise above the obstacles. All that should be needed. See, just like a student going to a school, it's not only the enrollment in the school, but after that, attending the classes, paying attention, coming home, doing homework, preparing for the exams, sitting for the exams, day after day after day. And that is just for a secular diploma. Over here, we are talking about becoming perfect. Because seeker is striving to become perfect. Totally refined. So those who are successful in their attempts at stilling their mind and cleaning their intellect of its disturbing attachments and desires, they will definitely come to recognize the glory of the self. So cleaning is needed, stilling is needed too. Only then you can experience this infinite beatitude. But those who put in mechanically plenty of self-effort, just only self-effort, without paying much attention to cleaning part also, they will not succeed. That's what he's telling us. Because there are hundreds of those who complain that they were regular in their spiritual program for years. They didn't see much change. Okay, so we got to look at it. If we don't see much change, if we don't see any transformation, we got to look at it. What are we missing? Where do we need to tune up a little? We got to wonder, why is this so? That God is in me, around me, with everybody, and I don't see. Why don't I feel it? We got to pay attention to that. It's as simple as that. We show unsatisfaction in the material world very easily. I worked hard, I did not make that much money. I exercised, but how come my body is still not healthy enough? We know how to feel unsatisfied. The same kind of a criteria we got to put it in our path of spirituality too. If I am all bliss, all beautiful, all loving, all compassionate, how come I don't feel that way? How come I don't feel content? Why do I keep on running towards the worldly joys? Pay attention to this mind of ours. This point is answered very logically in this verse. Because when Lord Krishna says, those striving, those of unrefined mind, akrit atma, that is a key word in this verse. And devoid of wisdom, achetasa, perceive him not. These are the two areas we need to work on. Or you can say two conditions are unavoidable if we want to yield the promised result of spirituality. The purification of mind is generally defined as removal of agitation. Okay? In Sanskrit, it's called vikshep. And vikshep is normally created with our own false, egocentric attachments with the sense objects. Remember that. Okay, let me repeat it again. The purification of mind is generally defined as a removal of agitations created by our false, egocentric attachments with the sense objects. And the second thing he says about the intellect, so intellect needs to be tuned up properly to a correct understanding of the nature of the self. So that means all the doubts of the misty mind, which is called avarna, it's like a veil covering, needs to be removed. How do we remove that? Through study, through reflection, through practice. Shravan Manan is this answer. Okay, so these are the two things he's telling us to do. Work on your mind, detach from the world, attach it to God, and work on your intellect also. These two adjustments can be easily done. Lord Krishna has mentioned several times before. Through practice of devotion, bhakti yoga, and through service, seva, karma yoga. These are the two paths. If somebody says, I sit down for meditation, but I cannot meditate, did you do seva? When was the last time? When was the last time you cried for God? That's a bhakti yoga. The tears should flow down when we sit in front of our altar. God, you are there, but how come I don't see you? I offer food to you. Why don't you take it? Why don't you eat it right in front of me? Just like we cry for our children who come to us and eat food cooked by us. Today is a Mother's Day, and I'm sure each mother, we want that, we like that. When children say that you are the best cook, Mom, do we have the same kind of a sentiments for God? Do we spend enough time like we want our children to spend time with us. It's not the gifts we need from children, but we want our children to spend time with us and tell us that they love us. That's all. That's what God wants us to do too. Spending time with God. Saying to God that, God, I love you only. I have wasted this whole life loving everything else but you. Then the mind gets cleansed, intellect is right there, and God is not far. So this verse emphasizes that those whose minds have not been properly regenerated through practice of self-control of the senses, and who have not renounced and abandoned their evil ways. Actually, akritatma is evil. That is, like, literal meaning is bad. Krit and akrit. Akritatma sees this world with a very limited egocentric standpoint. That means the pride has not been subdued yet. Such seekers, they can keep on meditating, they can keep on striving. There's not a much chance to see the divinity. That's what he's saying. They're striving. Definitely they're striving. Even though the self is the nearest and most easily perceivable, yet we do not see him because of the complete slavery to the enchantments of the sense objects. My own Guruji used to say, the mandir you have, do not bring the flowers which will overshadow God. God should be the most beautiful, not the flowers and the cloth and the garland. The most beautiful thing should be the God, not godly things or the physical objects. And I can see that this is what Lord Krishna is saying over here. In the next 4 verses, we'll see that how beautifully Lord Krishna is describing the eminence of the Lord as the all-illumining light of consciousness, as the all-sustaining life, as the subjective warmth of life in all living organism, as the self in all the hearts. This is how he is describing, so that we can understand what God is. So far, the self has been indicated as that which cannot be illumined by the known phenomenal sources of light. This is what he has been telling us, such as the sun, moon, or fire. That's why he says where he is, you don't even need those. It's a self-illumined. That which having reached, none returns, he says, back from the state of perfection. And the third thing he has told us, that which the individual entities are only as though a part. We are just an ansh of that. So this is what he has been describing so far. So Lord Krishna proceeds to give a short summary of his manifestations in the next 4 verses. So we'll try to understand these 4 verses together. Let's do at least one verse, verse number 12. You can also look at it that he is giving us a method for perceiving the existence of God. Yat aditye gatam tejaha jagat bhasyate akhlam yat chandramasi yat cha agnau tat tejaha vidhi mamakam. Yat means which, aditye gatam, residing in the sun. Aditya means sun. Tejaha, light. Jagat, the world. Bhasyate, illumines. Akhilam, whole. Yat means which? Chandramasi, in the moon. Yat means which? Cha means sand. Agnau, in the fire. That means that. Tejaha, light. Vidhi, known. Mamakam, mine. Which is residing in the sun. And which illumines the whole world. And that which is in the moon and in the fire, know that light to be mine. In our early days of schooling, we were told very scientifically that the earth is a portion of the sun that got detached from it and held with the web of mutual attractions of the planets and now cooled to the present temperature. But if we ask the question, did the sun itself come from the... Where did it come from? Can any science teacher answer it? I don't think so. Science can never answer that question. Okay. But philosophy seeks to satisfy the questioning of the human intellect regarding this ultimate source of all things, even if the necessary data for such an attempt may not be available. Because science looks for the data, but philosophy answers the questions differently. Why, how, what? Those are the questions of a philosopher. So where the science is silent, the philosophy starts its pilgrimage towards the absolute satisfaction. And here this verse says that the very light which emerges from the sun and which illumines the whole world is the light that is emerging from me. So who is the creator of sun? God is. He says me very clearly. The infinite consciousness. The light that comes from the moon also, the light that emanates from the fire also. Those are all expression of the infinite reality. The manifestations are different because the equipments are different. Just like light in the bulb, the heat in the furnace, the movement in the fan are all indeed different manifestations. But we all know that the energy, the electricity is the same. So the same way the consciousness expressed to the sun manifests as the sunlight, expressed through the moon as the moonlight, expressed through the dry fuel as the fire. But all of them, Lord Krishna says, in reality, nothing but the infinite. My glory, my glorious manifestations, they come from me. Very boldly, very clearly, he is telling us this. Upanishads talk about it. There was a beautiful story in the Kane Upanishad. With the help of all the Devtas, the same kind of a message we got over there too. We'll stop it here and continue with verse number 13. These very beautiful statements from the mouth of Lord Krishna himself. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Visheshyate Om Shanti 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 Om. Thank you very much.